Welcome, everybody. We are just opening up at 7 o'clock. We're going to get started in a few minutes. I'll just let everyone get filtered into the Zoom room. I'm really excited for you to join us tonight, and we're going to have a great conversation. So if you just stand by for a couple minutes, and then we'll get going. Okay, I think everyone's sort of in now. So let's get started. We have a lot to talk about tonight. So welcome. My name is Morgan Ineson. I'm the manager of education and research at Fighting Blindness Canada. On behalf of myself and everyone at FBC and our co-chairs this year, Haamid, Ramya, Sarah, and Amanda, I want to thank you for joining us for our webinar tonight. So as you know, this year we're trying out a new format for our Young Leaders program due to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's our third webinar this year. We're really excited that in October, we're going to have our first ever virtual summit. I want to give a huge shout out right off the bat to our sponsors at RBC Future Launch. Without their support, we couldn't run this program. So thank you to them for making all of this possible. So before we get into today's content, I want to talk about the summit. I have some pretty exciting news and announcements for that. So finally, we have some dates. We're going to be meeting virtually on October 16th to 18th for a really fun, informative, interactive experience. We're going to bring you educational workshops and small group discussions on the topics of employment, networking, and social supports. So just to give you a taste, some of our sessions are going to include networking and career panels where you'll hear from people living with vision loss about their challenges and successes in school and work. We're going to have small interactive roundtable discussions in breakout rooms, which will be great. And I'm really excited for our keynote this year. We've just confirmed that Samara Latif, who is the first ever accessibility leader at P&G, Procter & Gamble. And she is the creator of the Herbal Essences tactile shampoo bottles. She's going to be joining us to talk about her journey, which is very cool. Also, we're going to have a great interactive cooking workshop with Mary Mamalidi from Kitchen Confessions. She's developing a whole new recipe for us, and on Saturday afternoon, we can just all get together and cook and eat together. It's going to be a lot of fun. And that's just really the tip of the iceberg. It's going to be a great weekend. We have so much planned. The full program will be available next week on our website. So definitely visit our Young Leaders page to check that out and to sign up for the summit. We have a couple of really exciting promotions this year that I want to talk about. So firstly, we really know how difficult that it can be to find work, especially right now. So this year we're offering what we're calling the Young Leader Career Advancement Grant, which is worth $500. So if you're between the ages of 15 and 30, you're eligible to apply. So to do so, you just record a 30 to 60 second video clip describing how you would use $500 to help further your career goals. And then the finalists will be voted on during the summit. So you can email your entry if you're interested in that to me at education@fightingblindness.ca. The other exciting announcement I have is that we are working together with Fighting Blindness Canada's newest comedy event called Comedy from the Couch. This is going to be a virtual comedy experience that takes place on the Saturday of the summit in the evening, Saturday, October 17th. So you can join us for laughter and fun in support of sight-saving research and all the awesome work we do at Fighting Blindness Canada. So if you sign up for the summit before September 25th, which is, I believe, next Friday, you're going to be automatically entered into a draw to win one of 5 Comedy from the Couch prize packs. So that would include your virtual ticket to watch the event online and a snack basket that will be mailed to you to enjoy during the event. Who doesn't love snacks and comedy? It sounds good to me. And then if you aren't lucky enough to win, but you still want to be part of the event, Comedy from the Couch is offering a special discount to our young leaders for $50 tickets, which is a savings of about $100. So that's exciting. And if you're interested in any of that, you can also email me at education@fightingblindness.ca, or make sure you sign up for the summit before September 25th to be entered to win. So lots of great opportunities leading up to the summit. I will send everyone a follow-up email with all that information in case you didn't catch all of that. So let's just get into tonight's content. I've been talking too long already. Our panelists are going to speak till probably about 7:45, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. At any time during the webinar, feel free to type those questions in the Q&A box, which is available at the bottom of Zoom, or you can always email me again, the education email, education@fightingblindness.ca. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Ramya, who's going to moderate tonight's discussion. Ramya, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming on. Super excited to talk to you tonight. We're just past 7 p.m. Eastern time, but it's accessibility and accommodations time. We're going to talk a lot about this stuff in the workplace, at school, like, you know, whether you're starting a new job or not, or you're entering post-secondary, which is a huge transition. You might be wanting to figure out what kind of accommodations are available to you. And it's really complicated. I know, because I've been through post-secondary, been through the job search process, and especially when it comes time to finding out what your rights and responsibilities are. These are questions that you may not have immediate resources to, or know what exactly is out there until you get there. So we're going to talk about this, what your school and employer should be providing to you. And in this panel discussion, you're going to find out more about what you can expect and how you can best self-advocate, because that's another huge thing, especially going to post-secondary school, in order to participate fully in post-secondary and in the workplace. So we're going to introduce to you the panelists for tonight, starting with Gwen Page. She's director of the Accessible Learning Center at Laurier University. Hi, Gwen.
Hi, Ramya. How are you?
Great. Thank you for joining us tonight. Also, Jack, who's become a really good friend of mine, Jack McCormick, past Young Leaders Co-Chair and Organizational Development Coordinator at the Holton Healthcare. Did I get that right, Jack?
Got it right. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. Haamid Saifee is the next person on our panelist list, and he's a Young Leader Co-Chair for this year, and he's the estimator at an engineering company in Edmonton. Hey, Haamid. And Amanda Cape, she's also a co-chair this year with us. There's 4 of us, and she's starting her master's in social work at Ryerson University here in Toronto, and that's this fall. So thank you guys all for joining us tonight. We're excited to hear different perspectives from everybody, and I'll be moderating. I'm Ramya Amuthan. I'm also a co-chair, so there's 3 of us co-chairs out of 4 tonight. Sarah's hopefully in the audience. She's our 4th one, and I work for Accessible Media Inc. I'm the co-host of Kelly and Company, which is the live afternoon show on the network, the broadcaster. So we're going to get right into it. I just gave you a bit and a little teeny tiny piece of what our panelists are doing. And I'm going to ask all of you guys to introduce yourselves, and we'll start again with Gwen.
Thank you, Ramya. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gwen Page, so I am the director of the Accessible Learning Center at Wilfrid Laurier University here in Waterloo, Ontario. This is where I live and work. Been in this role for about 14 years now. I supervise or provide oversight to a team of we have 20 staff who are situated on over 2 campuses. So in my role, I'm responsible for ensuring that all of our processes, procedures, our services, programs, all kind of line up with our accommodation policy and that of the Human Rights Code, as well as policies that come out of the Human Rights Commission. So just want to make sure we have a nice alignment, we have seamless access for students. I'll provide oversight, supervision, and just kind of responding to any concerns that come forward from students. as well as just supporting faculty through this whole process as well. So here at Laurier, we have about, just this past year, about 2,142 students were registered with our Accessible Learning Center. So that would reflect about 10% of the student population, which is something that a lot of universities can expect here in Ontario in particular. That percentage would range anywhere from 8 to about 10 to 12%. Colleges that might be a little bit higher, probably about 14 to 18% of the students registered, the students of that school would be registered with a disability service office.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm pretty sure that the Q&A is going to be flooded with questions for you. I'm really excited to have your expertise on
Thank you.
Jack, we'll move on to you. Where do you live? What do you do? And your involvement with the Young Leaders Program also.
Yeah, so as Ramya said, my current role is Organizational Development Coordinator at Halton Healthcare. Basically, I work in the Human Resources Department and am responsible for training, development, performance management, and a whole host of other things. I am a relative recent grad myself. I've been out of school for about 2 years now, and have been involved with the Young Leaders Program since its inception. I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. I've kind of lost track of time at this point, but it's been some time, and it's been fantastic to see the program grow. And I'm
awesome. Well, you can present the heck out of anything. I remember you making up a icebreaker on the spot, and you did a great job. So thanks for coming on tonight. Amanda, we'll do you next.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Amanda. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and giving
Sure.
us an introduction?
So my name is Amanda. I am from Montreal. I currently have my Bachelor's of Social Work from McGill University, where I graduated in 2016. I then went on to do some volunteering and try and find employment. I was successful-ish. I have had some short-term contracts and things of that nature. But it was difficult to find more long-term permanent employment situations. So I decided very recently to go back to school. And now, as Ramya said before, I'm currently at Ryerson. I just had my official first day of class last week, but because of the scholar strike, it was this week. So I finished my first official week of classes, and things are going well so far. I just want to add, prior to McGill, I did a year at University of Ottawa, so I have a wide range of experiences with requesting accommodations, the Office for Students with Disabilities at the various schools, and my interactions and involvement with them, as well as professors or instructors, etc. And in terms of my involvement with the Young Leaders Program, I am newer to the team or to the program itself. I only heard about this program last year, and I attended the summit in Toronto. And now I'm the co-chair this year and really enjoying that role as well. So I hope to continue to be able to be involved in the program in the future.
Thank you so much. And you touched on a few things that we're going to probably get to in our first question, just to give you guys a heads up, talking about challenges that you experienced in the workplace or post-secondary. So you can think about that. And our final panelist, Haamid Saifee. Haamid, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, like you said, my name is Haamid. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta. So it's a little bit early over here in the evening. I've been with the Foundation Fighting Blindness Canada now since 2018. I've been involved in their programming. I've watched the program grow. When I first joined up, I was in my third year of engineering, which is now graduated last year. And for the last year, I've been working at an engineering firm. So doing a lot of design work and whatnot. Definitely looking forward to the summer this year and sharing some experience with you guys later down the road tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you. We'll get into the nitty gritty right away. And I know that because this is a virtual opportunity at the moment, it might be a little bit challenging to kind of jump in and make this more conversational, but we're going to try our best. And I'm going to start with the question of challenges, because I'm sure you all have experiences of challenges in the workplace, in applying to school, going through the whole process of post-secondary and getting in and things like that. So I'll start with Amanda, because you mentioned some of your challenges to begin with, and maybe we can kind of, jump off of each other's response. But Amanda, you want to talk about some of the more significant challenges you had in the workplace or with post-secondary?
Sure. So for me, I have often found myself, as I'm sure a lot of you can identify with, as the only blind person that has either attended the university, or not necessarily the university, but has attended, has been a member of a specific program, a specific faculty, or even an employee at a certain organization. So that's been always an interesting experience for me, in that I find myself teaching, which, I enjoy teaching. I like helping. I like public education, all that stuff. But at some point, I will admit, it does become a bit exhausting. And there are days where I think, could this be easier in any way? Could the educational staff perhaps have more training, more UDL principles, universal design learning principles, embedded in their courses, just by the nature of things? Can more employers be aware of what we can do as people who are blind and visually impaired? So I know I went off straight from the question a little bit, but I think the takeaway for me largely was the awareness and perceptions of others has been one of my greatest challenges, as well as technology and lack of accessibility and all that kind of thing. But
Yeah. Well, and you touched on something really important, which is, being part of an integrated environment or integrated society, right? If you're the only person in a school or a workplace that has a visible and, disclosed disability, it can get really complicated. Jack, anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, actually, I've got a really good story that actually involves Gwen, so I'll probably pull her into this one. But one of the greatest challenges I had in terms of accommodations happened during my education at Wilfrid Laurier University, where one instructor in particular designed his course in just about the least accessible way he could, and had no interest in actually changing that. And so it was a very challenging process to work with him to find ways to make it accessible, and more importantly, work with the Accessible Learning Center to get the support I needed to succeed in that class. I'm a pretty resilient person, like I'm sure all of you are, and fought for what I needed, and eventually through the help of the Accessible Learning Center did quite well in the class. It was kind of funny, after the first midterm in this particular course, I think I got something like 98 or 99% on it, and the professor was like a little surprised that I had done so well, because his course was clearly not set up in a way for me to succeed, and I did. One thing that I think would be interesting to hear is Gwen's perspective in situations like that. Like, how do accessible learning centers support students when they're having those types of challenges?
I'm happy to jump in if that's okay, Ramya. I think I just want to reinforce or underscore the challenges that Amanda and Jack both have identified. Just trying to build awareness and understanding in UDL, and I think in so many respects, we're trying to all make sure we're singing from the same song sheet. So we want to make sure that we have an awareness of what our roles and responsibilities are. We want to listen to students as well. We want to create this open atmosphere for students to come forward with their concerns. So I was so grateful when I got to meet and work with Jack over the years that he was at Laurier, because he was like, I want to affect change. I want to work with you to try to look at how do we kind of, move forward and create a level of kind of change and acceptance and accessibility and inclusion. And I think because we were able to kind of work together as a team, we're pretty collective at Accessible Learning. So we met as a group, brought Jack in. Let's start from there. We also kind of looked at the technology element of things as well, because so much of what professors are starting to use are these digital platforms, digital textbooks that are built on unaccessible platforms that do not interface with students' different levels of technology. So that's an ongoing battle that we're having with publishers, and to this date, we still are. Despite the AODA and those requirements, publishers are working hard to make sure that those materials are accessible. So we try to work together, try to find creative solutions. We take it day by day, and we also try to look at education and educating faculty and those that we're trying to bring on board. Just as Jack said, I don't think the professor had a real strong understanding about who this young man is and what his talents and skills are. When we had a chance to actually demonstrate them, it was like it was a little bit more of an eye-opener, I think, for him. So we were able to work with the professor. We got invited and come and presented to faculty council. So that's another thing that we try to look at doing is let's look at every opportunity possible to start talking about what these issues are and what people's roles and responsibilities are under the code, under the AODA. It's baby steps, it seems to be every day that we take to try to look at making sure that we're all kind of on board with what our responsibilities are.
And that's a huge point, right? Because, accessibility is like a generally described word. I'm having accessibility challenges. This is what the accessibility is like for me. Whatever the situation is, disability or not, accessibility is tossed around all over the place. Yep. But really, it's different for every single individual and every single circumstance. So I totally agree with you that it's baby steps, and the comprehension of accessibility is so different for everybody, and it's just not just AODA, and it's just not regulations.
That's right. And it's not just, oh, you're the Accessible Learning Office. Okay, you can deal with everything related to accessibility. People don't kind of understand that we all have a role to play here. And it's not just about the role of an accommodation office. It's the role of the faculty, the classroom, ICT, your actual environment, your whole campus. How you make it accessible and welcoming for all of your visitors as well. And so the education piece, I think, is huge, just to make sure that there's that awareness. And then how do we work together to make sure we can all adopt our roles and responsibilities?
100%.
Yeah.
Haamid, I want to pull you into this question as well. When it comes to challenges, whether you want to focus on the workplace, current or past, or post-secondary, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just want to bring a little bit into the school aspect of it. I'll talk about the workplace in a second here. Just because Gwen and Jack brought up such good points about awareness. So for myself, I was in more of a non-traditional field. So engineering is very visual based. I have a little bit of vision, but it's obviously tough. Like going to site now, as an engineer, usually you're expected to go to site, check out the workplace, check out to see everything that is built the way it's supposed to be built, or set up the way it's supposed to be set up, make sure everyone's practicing like safe work practice, basically. In university, I still had to go and do labs where you take measurements and whatnot. For myself, that was very difficult. And I think putting that awareness out there and teaching everyone else how to help me is kind of how I succeeded through that. And I think it's something that should be brought up to everyone, that you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help and let people know how they can help you, because usually they'll be very willing to do so. So I'll change the gears a little bit in the workplace now. So challenges in the workplace, it's the same thing, kind of carries over. You have to let people know how they can help you. I think one thing that's very challenging for most people is learning how to disclose what you can and can't do, especially when it's very close to what it affects your work performance, or what they might think will affect your work performance. It's very important to kind of let them know what you can do. Set the expectation, this is where I'm going to be challenged. This is what you can do for me. And this is how I'll be successful. So I think we have some other questions set up tonight. I can elaborate further in a bit here.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about your confidence in educating other people by just talking about what you need, what your accommodations are. And for some people who may be newer to their disability, maybe they were recently diagnosed, or maybe they're going through some changes with their disability, that might be a more difficult conversation to have, or not as straightforward as someone who's lived with a disability for a long time. So I want to jump to Jack again. Jack, do you want to talk about some of the rights and responsibilities of the workplace? So for employers and employees, and what's allowed, what's not allowed. We talk about what questions can you be asked at an interview, but beyond that, there are certain things that we might not be aware of in the workplace that are our rights.
Yeah, so this is definitely a topic, as each of the co-chairs know, I can talk forever about because it's work that I do. But at a really high level, some of your responsibilities are to let your employer know about accommodations you need after you've been hired. Because they can only accommodate you and only have that duty to accommodate you if you let them know. In terms of your rights at a very high level, you do not have to talk about a disability until you've signed your offer letter. There may be times where it's beneficial to maybe talk about your disability and how it's a strength of yours in the interview, but you don't have to formally talk about the disability in your interview process, on your cover letter, in your resume, things like that. The one exception to that is, and again, this is very high level, so, do some research to and understand your own situation. And I'm also happy to connect with people individually offline. But if you were to be applying for a job that you weren't able to complete every aspect of the job because of your disability without accommodation, then you would actually be legally required to let the employer know before they hired you. Best example I can give you of this is myself. I'm legally blind, as I'm sure many of you are. If I were to apply for a taxi driver job, I would have to let the interviewer know that I can't legally drive a car before they hired me. That being said, if it was a job like a lawyer who occasionally needed to travel to client sites and the job description said a driver's license is required, you would not have to tell them that you couldn't drive in that situation, because you don't actually need to have a driver's license to be able to do that job. There's other ways you can travel to your clients. Again, very high level of what some of your rights and responsibilities are. I can go into a lot more detail, and there's a lot more rights and responsibilities, but those are sort of the key points that you should know.
And Jack, I want to throw the next question right back at you as well, because knowing, in your field currently now, a lot of this stuff, you have to keep up to date on what those accommodations really are, being in HR. But how have you advocated for yourself in the past? Were there times when you found it to be much more difficult, or you didn't realize some of these things that you know now today?
Yeah, definitely. In my work experience, I've been very fortunate in that any employer I've had has been very accepting of my disability and been very willing to accommodate me. As I'm a big believer that confidence makes the biggest difference for this kind of thing. So, if you can walk into that interview and are confident and are, connecting with that person, it's a little bit different now, given that most interviews are taking place over Zoom. But if you can have that confidence and bring that to the interview that you're having, it makes a huge difference. I will often in interviews mention, I like to, only tell them about my disability if there's a need to. So, if I go into an interview where there's going to be a test and I need a computer to complete the test, that's a tool that I find is helpful. But I also like to talk about, at the end of an interview where they say, is there anything else you'd like to share? I will often say, as you can clearly see, I have a visual impairment. Based on the job description and our conversation today, I am confident that I can do everything in this job. I will require some very minor accommodations, which I'd be happy to discuss with you later. You start to cross a bit of a fine line if you start talking about those accommodations in the interview, because the employer could then make a hiring decision based on the accommodations you need, which could then put them in a difficult situation in terms of human rights legislation. So you're better off not leaving the door open to talk about it in the interview, because it can create some awkwardness for that employer, because they don't know what questions they should be answering and what conversation they should be having.
Very interesting. And your approach is, as you mentioned in your example, you being self-disclosed already, like walking in with a guide dog or a white cane, or visibly being legally blind, you still decide to disclose at your own pace. So that's really amazing. Thank you. Amanda, I'm going to pass that question over to you. Let's talk about self-advocacy and how you do it in the workplace or with your post-secondary experiences.
So in terms of, I echo a lot of what has been said already. This is sort of a personal preference thing, but when I do get called for an interview is usually the time that I will disclose, because my feeling is, because I only have light perception, the employer will figure it out once I walk in there with my white cane. And there also might be some other needs in terms of asking for precise directions, or, like Jack said, test taking, or something related to the job. So I'm curious also to get Jack's perspective on some of these things at some point outside of the webinar. But yeah, I would say, first of all, I think it's important for everyone to remember that disclosure and things around that it's very personal, a personal choice, and that can be a very difficult thing to hear and to experience, because there are some high level, I'm losing my words here, but some high level guidelines, but there are no hard and fast rules. There's no one simple answer. It's not a science, it's not a math type of equation here that we're dealing with. So that can be very frustrating at times. I've gone through it myself, and I've seen it with others, that they just want someone to tell them what is the right answer. How should we do this to be hired or to be welcomed in the academic spaces? But unfortunately, there isn't that clear-cut answer.
Right.
And I'd be happy to discuss more and to have dialogues post-webinar with anyone who might be interested.
Absolutely, because these are huge conversations. And Amanda, like to your point of there's no hard and fast rule, especially for people going into industries where they might not know another person with a disability who has done something like this. And that brings me to Haamid, for your engineering field. How did you feel when it came to self-advocacy? Because as you stated earlier, this is not something that, well, it's something that's highly visual and may not be just open with welcome arms for people who have vision impairment.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I graduated, I was so happy, and then reality hit me. Said, "Oh, now, how am I going to find a job?" Right? Because I didn't know anybody else in the field. I knew one other individual, but he lost his vision later when he was already kind of more at a senior position. So no one young like myself who graduated and I could talk to. So I kind of had to figure it out on my own. Advocacy, one of the biggest questions I would say is when you go to a career fair, when you go to a job interview, I think asking the right questions and defining right there for yourself whether this is a job which you'll be able to perform on a consistent basis, given some minor accommodations or whatnot. Like Jack said, if you're applying for a taxi driver position, obviously your primary role is driving. A lot of the roles in Alberta, at least for engineers, is there's lots of site-based positions where usually you'll be staying somewhere 1 hour away from where you'll be working every day. And you're expected to drive every single day there. So for me, pretty much every single question or every single interaction I had with a hiring manager or someone in HR was always, oh, how much travel is there associated with this position? Obviously, you can drive with other people, but if your primary role is to be on site all the time, there's also a risk when you're in construction because there's heavy equipment operating all the time and whatnot. So you need to be aware of what the challenges are going to be. And of course, there's a confidence aspect as well. If you're confident that you'll be able to overcome all those barriers, then sky's the limit, right? There's nothing blocking you. It's all in your head. So for myself, it's still a work in progress. Take it day by day. But I think that as you explore more and you ask the right questions and you network with more people, you'll be more comfortable knowing what you can do and what you can't do. And you can always, of course, push the limits. So.
And for you, like in this field, can that be super discouraging and to the point of, you questioning your thoughts of being in this field or what if ... Or do you feel that like your drive and, willingness to be in this industry and your obvious confidence to keep advocating for yourself, do you feel like that is what keeps it going for you?
I think discouraging, absolutely. There's people who, like there's certain situations where honestly you just can't do anything about it. Like there are positions where you really might want to work and do this, for example. Let's say you're gonna be a project manager, you have to travel a lot. Maybe that's something that you really want to do. It's something that I'm really interested in. But it's difficult because the reality is you're gonna need to travel a lot. And usually you travel independently, so it'll be tough. But then there's also like, I've come this far, and I think I'm still young. There's still time to learn, and the world is changing every day. Things that people are doing today, they couldn't do 20 years ago. Like self-driving cars is something which we're going to see maybe in the next 20 years. So basically, what I'll be able to do today is going to change versus where I'll be once I actually get. It takes 4 years to get a license in engineering. So once I'm actually a professional engineer, maybe by then self-driving cars will be a thing, and some of those barriers will be knocked down, and they'll be more available. So you just got to be, what's the word I'm looking for here? You got to be ambitious and you got to be optimistic about the future.
Yeah, and resilient for sure. Which
absolutely.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to jump back to Gwen for the next question, just for resource sake and for people who are like, these are amazing things and you guys are giving out such amazing information. Coming from an accessibility perspective, Gwen, where can people go, generally or specifically for more information on self-advocacy, on learning more about accessibility, our rights and things like that as people with disabilities? Where do we go for all this kind of information?
That's a great question. There's quite a number of options, I think, and we strongly encourage students, individuals to reach out and ask questions. So we receive a wealth of queries that come in from parents and students to our office. So start with your disability service office. Start asking questions and start asking questions early. I think the biggest challenge that some of our students run into when they're especially coming from high school into post-secondary is not connecting over the course of the summer, because this is when we can do all that really good work. We can kind of ask a lot of questions, we can appease some fears, we can do some proactive work with faculty, we can get things all set up as best as we're able when the term starts, so things are ready to go. So, asking questions with you typically would get a team of disability service providers that would wrap around the students. We would have a consultant who works with the students trying to adjust the accommodations as we go. we would have an assistive technologist, a transcriptionist to kind of look at the formatting of the materials, and our exam staff and our learning strategists. We all try to really work together. So it's actually encouraging the student to make use of what's available, right? So letting us know what you need, reaching out, engaging, keeping engaged with our office is key. When things aren't coming together, I think that's when you want to look at making sure you're going up within that system, right? So connecting out with a manager or director, and don't hesitate to bring those concerns forward, because folks like me, we want to hear what those concerns are, because we want to be able to try to figure out how we work within the system to make it better. There's also a lot of offices and universities outside of the disability service office that actually is set up for dealing with kind of potential disputes. So you have a dispute resolution office. So we encourage students to connect there. Your Dean of Students office, your faculty are great places as well to start to have some of those conversations. We have a lot of very, very willing and open faculty who are really willing to listen to the story of the student, so they can try to look at making some change. And they also too become the voice of the student to our office. Right. So I think when that happens, it actually works really, really well. There's also legislation outside of the university. So becoming aware of not only your rights, but what your responsibilities are in the process. I think Jack mentioned earlier, when you're 18, you are the driver. You're in the kind of the driver's seat around your access to your accommodations. So your voice is critical. So developing a comfort level and a confidence in being able to speak for yourself, working with the staff within the center and with your collateral supports at home, friends, family, just trying to kind of look at how do I find my voice and tell my story to make sure that I can get what I need, right, is so important. So educating yourself with, there's lots of good information on AODA websites, as well as the Human Rights Code. The Human Rights Commission has come out with a wealth of policies as well. And that's not legislation, but it's policies that we should all be paying close attention to make sure that we're lining up our services to make sure we're meeting some of those goals that are identified within the policies. So I think just reaching out, asking questions, and not being afraid to tap into any resource that's available to you to make sure that your situation can be heard and understood, your story can be told, and we can work with you to make things better.
Awesome. And is there any kind of organized peer mentorship or anything like that, particularly in Laurier, or that you know of?
We've done that, tried to kind of morph that program a little bit over the years. We do have peer support, a peer support group who works with various programs within the center. And they work directly with our students to try to come up with different initiatives or things to really look at how do we engage with more students? How do we kind of bring them on board? How do we kind of get them more involved? How do we make them more aware? So yeah, there's different initiatives. I find it's very interesting with every cohort of students coming in. You get a little bit different vibe from the students, so there's a little bit different energy. So we just try to capitalize on that, and work with it. So there are some student groups as well on campus, and lots of opportunity to actually start student groups as well. We have a pretty rich population of students who have vision issues at Laurier. I think it's because we are a bit of a smaller campus. We're on a block that's a little bit easier to navigate. So there is a really good connection for some of our students. And again, it really depends on the cohort that's there at any given time.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to move to Jack super quickly to see if you have any HR perspectives on resources, Jack, for advocacy and rights in the workplace.
I've already kind of given a high level say for people who are entering post-secondary education or who are in post-secondary education, the better you get at advocating for yourself and communicating what your needs are in a post-secondary situation, the easier it will be when you're in the workforce. When you're in university, when you're in college, you have much more supports. You've got an accessible learning center that can hold your hand and help guide you in the right direction. But when you're in the workforce, unless you're working for massive employer like, one of the big banks here in Canada, you don't have that same level of support. Yes, you've got the human resources department that can certainly support you, but they're not accessibility experts. They are people who will help you and do what they can to help you based on what you ask for. But you need to be able to articulate what it is you need so that those accommodations can be made. And you need to have a really honest and open conversations with your direct supervisor, so that they understand what your skills and abilities are, so that they can adjust your workload accordingly. In my current role, there's been certain things that haven't been super accessible for me. So that work's been redirected and I've been pulled into other programs. And what I've actually found kind of interesting in my role is that a lot of the less accessible work is much less interesting. And a lot of the more accessible work is much more interesting. So I've actually got to work on a lot more interesting projects because certain things haven't been accessible for me. Another thing that I just want to really touch on really quickly is that every job role you go into is going to have certain technologies that are going to pose accessibility barriers. For example, myself working in human resources and training and development, one challenge I have is building e-learning courses. And now most e-learning courses themselves are accessible, but the actual tools that you use to build them aren't. And that's something that I've really been struggling with and having to work with my employer to make happen. So it's worth doing the research to understand what those technologies are, and you have the experience to play with them and learn how you can use them before you go into that role.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Wow, amateur. Thank you so much, Jack. That was really comprehensive. And you're definitely correct about, it depends where you go. It depends who you are. It depends what you've been exposed to. And especially that transition from secondary to post-secondary is super important, because that's when you decide, kind of like fight or flight, right? And you can say, I'm going to go and just hunt these resources down and use everything possibly available to me. And if you decide against that, or if you find that it's difficult, I really, really, like, at least in my opinion, I really encourage you to just go and try to get as much assistance as possible to get you in the right direction. I want to get to just the final kind of word from everybody, and see, what you guys have to say about just, if you had to talk to someone about that one thing that they can really work on when it comes to accessibility and accommodation, if people are having difficulties right now at the moment, and you have one thing that you can say to them, some kind of advice, but that may not be the right word, where would you go? What would be the direction that you send them in? Amanda, we'll start with you.
To learn how to self-advocate as soon as possible, because practice is super, super important. I'm always learning, and I consider myself to be a fairly strong self-advocate, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, but it's not always something I'm able to articulate or to wrestle with or to grapple with, especially as Haamid was referring to before, when you're one of the only people in your profession that you are aware of, at least, with the same type of circumstances.
Amazing. Thanks, Amanda.
And I'm happy to talk about any of this with anyone post webinar.
Haamid, any last words from you before we get to question and answer? We'll still
Sure. Yeah, I would say, I just want to echo on what Jack said a little bit about learning how to advocate for yourself in post-secondary, and building that confidence, taking that confidence on once you get to the workplace, because like you guys said, smaller companies usually don't know how to help you. So you should know how to help yourself first. Tell them how they can help you. And 90% of the time they're going to be accommodating. So yeah, just building that confidence is really important. Being comfortable with yourself and knowing what you can do, and be persistent with it.
Thank you. Jack, we'll go to you.
Sure. I would say be confident. I've already said that. Be proud of your disability. It's very easy to look at your disability as a weakness, but it's definitely a strength, and you need to use it as such to really bring that confidence into the work that you're doing. And also keep your head up. It's tough, but if you keep fighting, it gets better. Also, I've got a shameless plug. I believe Morgan included a link in the email she sent out this morning to a social I have organized for after this. So if you're within our young leaders age, between the age of 17, I think it is, and 30, and want to join a social afterwards, please feel free to join.
We can also put it in our chat group here on the Zoom call so people can get the link if that's cool, Morgan, if that's accessible. And Gwen, well, thank you guys all. But Gwen, I want to get any last words from you. We appreciate your expertise and coming straight from the accessibility angle of things from a post-secondary perspective and giving us, you know, all that information as the director at the Learning Center in Laurier. But go ahead.
Thank you. I think just in addition to all the great suggestions that have been offered already, just connect, feel confident to reach out. You're no problem. And don't let things fester for too long. If you feel it's an issue and you have a concern about it, let whomever know. Like if it was within my center, similar to what Jack did, I'll just kind of like pick on you, Jack. Connect early and let me know it was a problem, right? And it's not, your problem is not too little, it's an important issue. And we need to be aware of what's happening. We have a lot of students that are registered with us, and we don't often know what's happening with every student day to day until they come forward and let us know. So we're welcoming ears and we want to hear what's going on.
That's amazing. Yeah, we're kind of just like thrown into the deep end, really, with those secondary. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go through some of the questions that Morgan I can see in the Q&A section. This one is specifically for Haamid.
Jump in for just one quick sec.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to jump in for one quick sec. I really appreciate everything that everyone has said tonight, and I think it's such valuable information. You know, as Jack mentioned, like shameless self-plug, I think connecting with others is so important. And that's why the Young Leaders Program continues to be really relevant. So, you know, connecting at the summit, even if you're not sure about like the workshops and that sort of thing, just being able to connect to other people, I think is really, really great. And I have put in the chat for the webinar, the link to the social, Jack. And also if anyone needs it afterwards, they can email me and I can send it to you as well. So yeah, if you have the questions, Ramya, you can go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just saw the question from Amal for Haamid. This is regarding services, education, and work for blind and low vision people. And he wants to know which city wins these categories, Calgary or Edmonton. Sounds like a little bit of a war. And which department would be best for the workplace? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. So for accessibility, I think one major thing is, first of all, it's mobility. I think Calgary is probably, it's more centrally focused than Edmonton is. Like there's a lot more offices and whatnot. The downtown is a lot more compact. It's a little easier to travel around and whatnot. And there's definitely more jobs in Calgary than there is in Edmonton. I live in Edmonton, but I think in terms of accessibility, Calgary would be dominant. Just going on your question, I know you asked, so I'm just trying to pull your Q&A up here. I answered one part, I'm trying to answer the second part here. Okay, what department is best fit for people with low vision? This really is an open-ended question. It depends on what you're into, I guess. I think you shouldn't put any limits on what you can do. I would say engineering is probably terrible for people with low vision, but I'm pushing it. It's all about what you want to do. I think you can always make it work within reason.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And the second question that's up in the Q&A, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to type it in there. Maybe Morgan, we can do it some other way also. But the second one from Stephanie is regarding assistive technology. So if you all want to kind of jump in with what you use for assistive tech in the workforce or in post-secondary, Haamid, we can start with you and then we'll just go around the table.
Sure. So in post-secondary, I like copying all my own notes down. So I use the monocular to read the board. it was probably a little tedious because I was like holding it like this and writing with my other hand. But everyone told me I had neater notes than they did. So that's one thing. Other than that, it's just at work now. There's a lot of drawings which I look at all day. So I use a CCTV. But like I said, I have some vision. So it'd be nice to hear from some of the others what they use.
Cool. Amanda, how about you? Oh, I'm not sure if Amanda.
Sorry, I had to come off mute. As far as assistive technology, I use personally JAWS, VoiceOver on my iOS. Braille's a huge one for me. Probably others that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but those are my main technology pieces. And I find it's super important to have as many tools as you can in your toolbox to be prepared. And then you can pick and choose.
Absolutely agree with that statement. And Jack, how about yourself?
Oh yeah. So personally, I use a MacBook with VoiceOver, but this is the first Mac I've actually ever owned. So prior to that, I used a PC with Zoom Text because before I had much better vision. But at work, I use a PC with JAWS on it. One thing I just want to mention to people, I know a lot of people tend to prefer VoiceOver on a desktop computer compared to JAWS. But it's really important that you know JAWS because most workplaces use a PC or a Windows environment and don't use Mac. And it's also important to learn how to use like different web browsers because certain applications and tools you will use only work in certain web browsers and will work better with your screen reader in different browsers.
Great points. Yeah, no, absolutely. I myself, if I can jump in also to answer this question, I use screen reader technology, so VoiceOver, voice assistant on Samsung phones, TalkBack on Android, just general Android platforms. I don't use JAWS, but I've learned to deal with NVDA as a default free screen reader option on Windows, and Narrator, which is the default screen reader that comes with Windows, the built-in one. But also, I have some visual stimulation, so I like to use invert colors or reverse contrast or night mode or dark mode, as now Apple calls it, as well as magnification and zoom. So there are, like Amanda was saying, a lot of different ways that you can kind of deal with accessibility. We all have preferences and favorites, but I echo also Jack's sentiments in it's good to have a lot of different options in your pocket, because if you get into a situation where your employer or your post-secondary institution will only provide certain things for you, or some things are literally only accessible on certain platforms, then you're kind of stuck if you're like, well, I only use a Mac. So that's that.
Ramya, can I also add to that one quick thing? Just to say that there are tons of resources online, but also like support groups on Facebook and on WhatsApp. I'm a part of a whole bunch of them regarding assistive technology. So if that's ever something people are interested in, let me know and I can connect you.
Great. Yeah. And lots of podcasts out there as well. Now the blind and low vision community has put out a lot of things that are accessible pretty much internationally now when it comes to assistive technology, because it's such a huge subject and there's so many different variations of accessibility combinations for people. So definitely. I just want to say thanks again to everybody, because this has been an entirely fascinating conversation and really interesting. And, I've been low vision for 27 years and I still feel like during these conversations, we learned so much. So we appreciate it. And I will pass it on to Morgan.
Thanks, Ramya. Yeah, I just the same. I think it's great. And as it happens every single time, I feel like we never have enough time to talk about all these topics and answer everyone's questions. So, if you have a question that you weren't maybe brave enough to ask, or you think of something after the webinar, you can always email me at the education inbox and I can pass your question along to any of our speakers, or I can help you as well. So thank you to all of our panelists. Really great discussion tonight. And I'm sure it's stimulating a lot of thought. So I just want to let everyone know as well that after our broadcast, probably tomorrow, there will be a link to view a recording of this on our website under the past events. So you can share this with anyone in your network and spread the word about our program and all of this great information that we had tonight. I also want to do a plug for, you know me, and the surveys. I'm always talking about surveys. So when you're done, if you could just take a few moments to fill out the RBC survey, it really helps measure the impact of our program as we go forward, planning for next year as well. So as we mentioned, Jack has planned a really great Zoom social. So if you're interested in fostering a bit more connection, talking to our young leaders a bit more, I have put that link in the chat. And I will check my email a couple times tonight. So if you need the link, you can email me as well. So yeah, I think that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining us. Please sign up for the summit on our website, October 16th to 18th. It's going to be a great time. Everyone, please, Ontario numbers are rising by the day, so just stay safe, stay healthy, and I really look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Hope you all have a great night. Thank you.